Hello and welcome to the Teach Music 21C podcast series. I'm Merlin Thompson, the creator and founder of Teach Music 21C, a community of music teachers empowering music students as lifelong music makers. And I'm joined today by Michelle Kennedy Hawkins, a 2023 graduate of the Teach Music 21C certification program. Michelle, thanks for joining in.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Good to have you here. And I'm just going to jump right to the topic of the day, which is, can you tell us a little bit about how the Teach Music 21C certification program, what I call strategies, tools, philosophy, what kind of impact has it had on your teaching over the last while?
Well, I have been thinking a lot about what we covered in the 21C because I teach a lot of beginners for piano and voice. But I've been especially focusing right now on implementing the ideas with my piano students. And I've got young piano beginners and university age piano beginners. And our beginners have, we have a certain program, Keyboard Explorers, that's a little bit more of a set structure and certain things that myself and the other teachers who teach it go through. But I've been trying to also implement the flexibility talked about in Teach Music 21C in a variety of ways with repertoire, but then also with getting feedback from students and trying to tap into their creativity and different ways that we can, them and myself can brainstorm on how to practice and adapt everything for each individual student. Because while we do have some certain songs and certain ideas we like to go through in a certain order, I'm trying to be even more conscious of how to make that work the best for each student, because of course each student learns differently, different personality, different practice setup at home and what time they have, and trying to be really sensitive to that and have it be the best experience for them while still having them learn some of the things I would like them to learn as well, and of course things that they want to learn too.
Yeah, fantastic. So, the whole thing about the Teach Music 21C certification program is this idea of flexibility, the idea that we're going to have more than one approach to curriculum. We're going to have this reflective partnership teaching communication strategy so that we get really good at gathering information and involving the students in that process of what are we going to do next and how are we going to move through the next challenge or the next easy part of the study. Do you have any thoughts about how the reflective partnership teaching might be figuring into your teaching?
Yeah, I have some examples. So while I do have some songs that I like us to do, or types of songs, we use
Right.
a lot of folk songs. I've been trying to be more conscious about giving them, if we have a couple folk songs that cover the same type of thing, like a dotted quarter eighth rhythm tom T or something like that.
Yep.
If we have a couple that cover that, if they have a desire, a leaning towards one song over the other, I let them have some choices within that. How we play them, we usually harmonize with chords for those particular songs, but getting more feedback from the student, giving them some examples, but then letting them be creative with it about how they might want to do those chords, different formations, broken or different rhythmic pattern. We also do lots of transposing with those songs too. So letting the student choose the keys sometimes,
Right.
like say, let's do this key, and then can you choose two other ones at home and then come show me next week. And it's really interesting to see which keys they'll pick, because some of them will be like, I want to do C sharp major, something
Sure.
like that you might think might be more challenging to some students, but they're like, oh, I want to try the hardest thing I can think of, or the most
Yeah.
flat keys, or something like that. Also, I'm trying to get them doing a little bit more reflecting, like we've spoken about in the course. I need to work more on that, especially with the young ones, finding ways to have them reflect on what they've done or how they might want to work on things. Because I always feel the time crunch, trying to fit everything in, but I'm working really hard on doing more of that, and I want to implement more of that next year. We had spoken, I think it was during the course, about I was going to put sticky notes, little reminders to myself, like, oh yeah, stop and ask the student to ponder how did that play through go, or getting some of their responses to remind me to fit that in.
Sure.
Because I do know how important that is, and I would just want to increase that. I also, we also have, I provide some time to put in other songs as well that the students have interest in. So I have one young man who is, their family are Star Wars fans.
Right.
So he's working on some Star Wars songs. And another one who's very into Pirates of the Caribbean right now and really likes really long songs. So he thinks the longer the better. So he's got a couple of long ones from those movies. And just transferring our knowledge from what we've learned from our basic songs onto these other special songs that no other student is learning.
Nice.
That's been a fun thing to do as well. And sometimes, because of the level, some of my students are very young, I've had to do, my own simplified arrangements and that sort of thing. But it's so nice because while they enjoy most of the songs that we do usually, it's fun to see that extra special spark when they get to play a song that they wanted to do for what seems like forever for them.
Sure. And have there been any surprises for you?
There's surprises. Surprises every day. Sometimes it's a surprise what if I ask them for input on what special song they might want to do. Sometimes it's surprising what they're into. I had one student who had played one minuet from one of the early conservatory books and got on this minuet kick. I want to do all the minuets that are in there. I did not expect that. Or just sometimes if we find an arrangement that's almost perfect for them, but maybe slightly advanced, it's sometimes a nice surprise to discover. I was like, well, let's try this one and see how it goes, and to see them rise to the challenge.
Yeah.
That's a very pleasant surprise as well.
Yeah, so it's really fun to hear about you, how you're branching out and trying new things, and I can see there are certain areas that for teachers can be really scary, like giving so much independence to the students, giving them so much choice, and this idea that what are we going to do when they choose the piece that's obviously more difficult than where they are. But what I'm hearing from you is that, yeah, they rise to the occasion as much as they can. And then with a little bit of help from you, well, you get somewhere. Do you get to the end of that destination? Maybe you do. Maybe you understand. And the student starts to understand that, oh, here's what I can do to actually get ready for this, so it will be possible in the future. It sounds really interesting. So there's a certain amount of exploration going on in your teaching. I can really hear that, which sounds really exciting. Can you tell us anything else that's been kind of something that came out of the blue for you?
Out of the blue. Well, one of my students is passionate about hockey. Sure. And so we learned the good old hockey song.
Oh, absolutely.
And it was a challenging piece, but he got it together very well. Yeah. And he loves hockey and loves the song, so he wants to do it in the spring recital, but he mastered it in time for festival. And so, like, how can we keep him playing this but not get too bored with it? And so I said, well, let's try transposing at least the right hand into this other key, which we do lots of transposing, but usually with simpler songs. Right. And so we tried it in this other key, and I thought, well, it'll be a good experience for him, and we'll see how it goes. And I thought, well, we'll get at least this section done. But he had surprised me this week. He had a lot more of it figured out than I expected. And so it was neat just to see where that exploration led. And it gave him something to challenge his brain a bit more rather than stagnating on the song. Right. And of course, sometimes I'll have students just try different things, like play higher, play lower, play with the pedal, try a different sound if they have an electronic instrument at home, and things like that to vary things up too. But we just happened to try the transposing this harder song for him. And so that was this week's surprise.
Yeah. And the outcome is that students are engaged, they're
Yes.
motivated, they keep on going. And it's that whole thing. If we're keeping on going, we have the opportunity to try more things, and teachers can introduce more of those things that we really want to pass on to students. So keeping that momentum going, keeping the students engaged, keeping them interested, it sounds like you're really nailing it.
I'm trying to keep it in mind and try to keep building on that, because I am a person who I love systems and I love progressions and logic.
Yeah, sure.
And I do love creativity as well, but I was finding that balance or changes of balance, a little bit more of this, a little bit of that. Yeah, this has made my brain engage more as well, because I've taught since I was a teenager, and so it's refreshing to also ponder things from different angles. I'm always looking to learn more. And it's always exciting to see what comes back at me from the students when we try that. Different things.
Yeah. So when you open the door and you don't know what's going to be necessarily on the other side of that door, but nonetheless you open the door, you give it a try, and you find out, wow, there's some interesting things there actually that are really worthwhile to explore that you wouldn't have gone to with a different kind of system. So bravo to you for just taking things on, giving it a try, finding out that students do have this idea of their own musical wish list they've got in the back of their heads. And if we can find ways to combine that wish list with the things that we're concerned about passing on, then we can get a lot of things done. It's really marvelous. I'm curious, have you got any questions for me today?
Yes, I do actually. So I also teach, as I mentioned, these beginner university students.
Sure.
So they might be business majors or science majors, or occasionally a voice major who needs to bring up their piano skills.
Yep.
And we have a fairly tight timeline for each semester. And once they're in their second year, they have a jury or piano exam at the end of each of their 2 semesters. And so there's not much time, and there are certain expectations of what they need to present at the jury.
Got it.
And so I'm having a harder time finding ways to individualize things for them. Yes, I can let them choose some repertoire within certain categories or time eras. But beyond that, I'm looking for more ideas on ways I can tailor things for their different learning styles, different interests. Incorporating flexibility into that, yet still helping them reach what they need to for their spring and winter juries.
Yeah, and the challenge is always with the repertoire. What comes to mind for me right away is the opportunity to take the repertoire that you do in the fall semester and up the ante in the winter semester. So, we're always tempted to, it's winter semester, we've got to start a whole bunch of new pieces. But I'm wondering what would happen if you didn't start everything brand new in the winter semester, but instead of that, maybe 1 or 2, half of what the repertoire will be new things. The other half is really to focus on what can we do with that repertoire that was from the fall to take it to another level. What can we do with it? So that kind of idea, for me, one of the shortcomings of where we're coming from with the traditional music teaching approach is that there's always deadlines and destinations, and some of them can be too short. Like a 16-week term is too short. You don't get far enough along. But if you thought of that 16-week term as just the first part of another term, not necessarily keeping everything from one term to the other, but building on it that way, it seems to me that gives us an opportunity then to really take things to another level.
That's a good idea. I did have a couple students who started one of the songs that they did at the end in the spring. They started them earlier in the fall, and we just didn't perform it at the first jury. We saved it for the second jury.
Yep.
And so that worked fairly well for them because they were able to get more secure in those particular songs. They're a little bit more challenging. And then we were able to do more musicality with it, with dynamics and such. But I like the idea of also allowing other exploration beyond
Yeah.
just the traditional, oh, let's get the phrasing, let's get the dynamics, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe explore some different interpretations and things like that. I want to implement more. I have been doing more this year, but I want to do even more, especially with that age group of the university age. Of course, they're so good at conversing and having their own insights about
Mhm.
their learning. And so I was able to do that with some of my students this year, get their input on how to work on a difficult phrase.
Yeah.
They had some good ideas on how to do that, or asking how their practice went,
Good.
that sort of thing. Yeah, and getting feedback on how things went during the week
Nice.
was something I picked up from your course as well. I forgot to turn my phone off, my home phone. Turn my cell phone off.
Well, Michelle, this is probably an opportunity to wrap things up. I really appreciate the opportunity to get together with you today and to hear where your teaching's at and how you're expanding things. It sounds really marvelous. Opening those doors, finding out what's behind them, giving some new things a thought, involving students more in that whole ongoing decision-making process and reflective process. So bravo to you. It sounds really marvelous.
Well, thank you. I feel like I've learned a lot over my teaching career, but I know I still have tons to learn and things to try with my students.
That's what it's all about. We're keeping on going, and the ongoing learning for us too is a really important factor. So I'm Merlin Thompson. I've been here today with Michelle Kennedy Hawkins. We're both connected with Teach Music 21C. This is the Teach Music 21C podcast series. I want to thank Michelle for joining in today, and hopefully we can get her back to talk more on another occasion. Michelle, thanks so much for joining in.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me to chat with you.
Wonderful. And for everybody else who's joined us this morning, thank you for joining in, and we'll see you the next time around. Thanks so much for now.